Classic Skyblock is the most downloaded and most iconic map ever created for Minecraft Java Edition. You spawn with very little, and with your knowledge of the game you have to survive with what you have. It's not easy, not in the slightest. Especially in hardcore mode, where one slip up is all it would take to end it all. In the first 100 days, I spent my time getting more comfortable with my world, without really focusing on aesthetics. In this 100 days, I wanted to change that. I had 4 major goals this time. The first one was to completely rebuild my island and make it a place that I could be proud of. Another was revamping my gold farm to make it almost 100% fully automatic. And the third and fourth goals were to get netherite armor and beat the game. I think you guys will enjoy how I managed to do that one. Allow me to tell you the tale of how I survived 200 days in hardcore Skyblock. But before we can do that, I'm gonna ask that you guys check if you're subscribed to the channel. If you aren't, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would really help me out a lot. Guys, I read the comments. I saw them, alright? I saw them all. To start off this 100-day session, I took the knowledge you provided in the comments section and used gravel to duplicate my dirt supply. This was a complete game changer, and it was a feature I didn't know about despite my 10+ years of playing Minecraft. With this dirt, I would be able to expand my farmland and basically do whatever I wanted with it, since all I needed was gravel to create more, which was not hard to get with the use of piglin trades. So I spent the first few days using all the gravel I had to turn into coarse dirt, which I would then right-click with a hoe to make it regular dirt, and repeated that process. This dirt would dominate this session, and I have you people to thank for it. Thank you! At the end of the first session, we had built the skeleton of an iron farm, but unfortunately, both zombies I had tried to install had died or despawned. Third time's a charm. I wanted to make sure that this one would survive as long as possible. I rebuilt the soul sand water elevator once more, and took advantage of my dark room spawner's position to easily deliver my new zombie. After doing this twice before, I was pretty good at it. I encountered the zombie holding a piece of gunpowder and decided he was the perfect choice for my third zombie. I increased the altitude of my tower that held the golem farm, adding a wall to protect my zombie from harm. And after meticulously building said tower, I tore down the walls of cobblestone that blocked the zombie from making eye contact with the villagers. In other words, I turned the golem farm on. Immediately, iron golems began to fall into the lava, and soon enough I was already placing hoppers below the lava to collect the insane amount of iron that the golems were producing. I was extremely paranoid that I would lose another zombie, so I obsessed over simply watching the golem farm, which came up with some interesting things. What is that? He's clogging the spawn rates, bro. For some reason, the golems were spawning on half slabs and inside of blocks, suffocating them or leaving them alive to clog up the golem farm. I fixed this, kind of, by making the top of the tower solid blocks, so that the golems would have no reason to spawn on the tower itself. I would say this fixed it almost completely. However, over the course of the next 100 days, a few golems decided to still spawn in the blocks, but not enough to be a nuisance. Using the iron, I finished off my weaponsmith's trades, and finally unlocked the diamond sword trade, which meant I had all the necessary tools as diamond. Also, it rained for the first time. The discovery of duplicatable dirt had inspired me to make my island insane. I had the idea in my mind and it would become a reality. In the previous 100 days, I mentioned this. I wanted to begin modernizing my builds, and modernize I shall. I had an idea for a massive circular structure, with 4 quadrants making up a fully functioning base. Each quadrant would host a specific type of functionality. I wanted to start from the outside and work my way in, because the outsides is where I would have a road that went across the entire circumference of my base. This meant I needed to build 2 massive circles with perfect dimensions, and then fill the gap between them with wooden planks. So, instead of trying to figure out the dimensions of these circles using math, I searched up an online circle generator specifically for Minecraft, and here are the 2 circles I made. Now that I knew how to make my circles, I collected all the smooth stone I owned and began to build outwards. Pretty soon, I was done the outer ring of the road, and that was followed by the inner ring, which I began filling in with wooden slabs, just like the small pathway around my golem farm. Consistency is key. It was time to say goodbye to my old initial structures. Expansion requires the destruction of the old, so I sadly began tearing down things like my initial bedroom, my mob spawners, my crops, and my nether portal. I had a blast destroying my mob spawners, by the way. I decided I wanted it to go out brightly and explosively. Kind of. So I crafted the flint and steel and lit the thing up, praying I wasn't making a mistake by lighting it on fire. Without the mob spawner, the island was already looking much better, and much more tidy, which I took as determination to destroy the rest of my old structures. I couldn't yet destroy a few things, however, like the medieval home which held my villagers, my cobblestone generator which held my lava, my storage room which held my items, and of course, my task wall which held my goals. Now it was time for another big ordeal. I wanted to have a water net completely surrounding my base, so I began creating it. You guys really liked the water net idea last time around, so I decided to add some extra protection, and this was what it turned out to be. It may look ugly. It may look very ugly, but it will save us. I spent more time getting dirt, which I used to begin filling in the sectors with. I wanted to have grass in every sector, which doomed me to spend multiple days in the Nether grinding gravel from piglins, but I decided it was worth it. During my time in the Nether, I had actually managed to save 2 chickens that had been rudely mounted by baby zombified piglins. Bringing them both to the overworld, I made them frick using seeds, and then I enslaved the family into a tiny, fenced-off area to make sure they wouldn't walk off. Now that they had bred, they hopefully wouldn't despawn like my original chicken had. In other words, I now had animals, and that was only the start of it. This... Oh, thundering. This is interesting, guys. Look at my F3 at the biome. It's wooded mountains here, and then it's plains here. There are biomes in this. There are biomes in we could abuse that. Why is my gold helmet still on? We could abuse this. Once I had finished placing my dirt for the first sector, which took about 2 actual hours of piglin training, by the way, I decided that this sector would be specifically for villagers and my chickens. So I got to work by building an extremely small farmhouse. I knew villagers would pathfind to workstations if I broke their current ones, so I trusted in their ability to find this new house on their own by destroying their current working stations and relocating them into the village sector. Sure enough, they made their way over and settled in. Even Greg the Golem followed them. Now I could finally tear down the eyesore that was this house. Progress with tearing this down was going smoothly until I began to lose focus. This was the first time in over 120 days that something like this happened. Oh my god, dudes. Oh my god, dudes. Oh, this water, that's the first time. That's the first time the water net has truly just saved my life. After recovering from that experience, I finished my job and the medieval house was no more. You remember how I said I could abuse the fact that the world had biomes? Well, what happened next was not quite what I had in mind. Guys? Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? You see what I mean by abusing the plains biome? That's the wrong thing. In the plains biome, we got the sheep to spawn. I now had another source of wool other than string. I didn't want my village to consist of just one house, so I began building more structures, which included a simple well and a house for masons. And I was greeted with more animals. 2 pigs. That meant I could breed them. I don't know how I didn't notice this until now, but we have 2 pigs here. I've literally been wandering next to these men for about 20 minutes. Finally, to finish off the village, I constructed the town hall, which eventually would be for librarians. I was proud of this build, simply because it was not easy to pull off diagonal builds, but thankfully I had practice. I connected everything with pathways, and finally decided it was time to relocate my task wall. Moving it to the edges of my island opposite of my portal, I designed it to stand out and draw attention, which was good for me because I often would forget my previous task wall existed. On the eve of day 130, I encountered phantoms again and rushed to sleep, but the phantoms were right on my tail. Thankfully, Greg the Golem proved his worth to me that night. Please, 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 please. I spent days 130 to 133 placing dirt for the second sector, which I decided would be for more industrial farms. I also attempted to partially automate my gold farm by keeping an area for zombified pigmen to constantly alert their brethren. In case you guys didn't know, in order for a zombified piglin to become aggressive, they need to hear this sound. So I attempted to trap a zombified piglin at a higher altitude, so that when he growled, all his friends above would fall down and attempt to kill me. Unfortunately, this for some reason didn't work, and I decided to scrap it. But I didn't scrap the idea. Sector 2 time! My first task was to relocate my pillar of creation, which I did as quickly as possible. Next up was to figure out where everything else would go. It wasn't perfect, but I put a cactus farm near the front relative to the iron farm, trees in behind, and mushrooms to the right, the left side of course being dominated by the cobblestone pillar. I was extremely proud of this sector, amazed by what could come from those early game items. I now had 2 out of 4 sectors complete. I always enjoy saying this. Back to the Nether. It's gold farm time. Taking the idea of a constant aggressiveness of the zombified piglins, I decided I was done being lazy with this farm. Using flint and steel, I burnt down the previous farm and laid out the dimensions of yet another gigantic circular structure, similar to my overworld island. Using several stacks of oak planks, I filled in the 2 rings. My heart was pounding out of my chest for this project, because I was aware of a certain mob that had potential to spawn on my platform. So, I placed slabs in the way that no ghast could spawn at the gold farm at all. Because if one did while I was working on it, it would be incredibly difficult to contain the fire his attacks would make. Wooden platform plus gas fireball equals bad times, alright? However, no ghast spawned thanks to my slabs. Finally, I was ready to test out the farm. I knew that if I angered the zombified piglin by shooting him, all his friends would rush through the center to try to attack me. I made sure to stand clear to not be mauled by the piggies as they fell, and it worked. The piggies were alive long enough to keep a continuous aggressiveness towards me, alerting anything else that spawned to come attack me. I'd say this increased the rate of gold I got to tenfold. So much so that I was able to get enough gravel to complete the 3rd sector after just half an hour. Keep in mind, that's over 6 stacks of gravel per sector. After reviewing the replay mod footage on my gold farm, I realized that my slabs I had placed actually decreased the rate of spawns that I could be getting. So I headed back to the gold farm once again, and instead of having my slabs on the floor, I would simply raise them 2 or 3 blocks high, so that ghast could still not spawn but anything else could. After that, the farm worked even better, and in no time, I had enough dirt to finish all 4 sectors, which I did with great pride and happiness over completing a major goal of this session. I guess you could say I was stoked. In day 158, I declared that the 3rd sector would be for farmland and mob spawners, so I got to work tilling the new soil. Day 158 to 164 saw the construction of a brand new darkroom mob spawner. This one was much larger and could spawn any mob besides Endermen. This farm's design was much different. Instead of just a giant chunk of wood, I tried to decorate it as much as I could, and even though it was still just a huge box, at least it was alright to look at. In the end, this spawner worked much better than its predecessor. In deciding I had enough XP, I made it so most mobs would simply die on impact, and their items would be collected by hoppers. The 4th and final sector was for me specifically. It had occurred to me that I didn't actually have a home yet, and I had just been sleeping in the village up to this point, often out in the open. It also occurred to me that my storage was still sitting around taking up space, so the only logical thing to do was to build a house. I wasn't going to build just any house either. I decided I was going to build this. To make sure I actually could, I spent some time building on a creative world with the materials I had access to. And once I figured out it would work, I got to work. I was proud of what I had built, but I wasn't done yet. Next came the incredibly tedious task of transporting everything I owned into my new house. Thankfully, while building in creative mode, I had taken into account just how many chests I would need, so everything fit perfectly. But I still wasn't done. I had a lawn to decorate. Oh!
Oh.
I just started drowning for the first time in my world. I constructed a little pond for fishing and applied my automatic smelters in behind so that they were rarely noticed. I caught my first fish that day, and using some fish, I tamed my first friend, who was a cat that I named Man. Sadly, Throughout the rest of my 100 days, the fishing never yielded a name tag for man. Once the pond was done, I realized I was completely done my base. To think that all of this came from a single source of water and lava, some trees, some dirt, some sand, some cactus, and access to the Nether. It was truly incredible what you could do with these resources. Now, allow me to take a break to discuss something with you. I mentioned at the beginning of the video I wanted to beat the game, but some of you may be wondering, how do you do that without access to a fortress? Well, when I mentioned biome abuse earlier, I wasn't actually talking about spawning animals. That was just kind of an added bonus. I was talking about something much deeper than that. I've been playing this game for a long time, and I remember a time where void worlds weren't actually creatable from the superflat option. If the creator of classic Skyblock had made a void world, there would be no biome variation in the world at all. It would just be plains forever. However, since I knew this map was so old, and since it had biomes, I began thinking, what if the creator had loaded an actual world and simply used a program like WorldEdit or MCEdit to remove a huge chunk of land? You see where this is going? That's right. Skyblock has a seed, and even though I never checked it, I knew it existed simply because of the biome variation. What this meant was that if the creator had cut out a huge section of the world, that would mean if I traveled up far enough over the void to load new chunks, those new chunks would have the Skyblock seed applied to it, creating a fully fledged Minecraft world with everything I previously never had access to. So, I created a backup world to test this out, changing my game mode to spectator, and I flew out into the Nether as far as I could until I was greeted with a magnificent sight. My theory was correct. Merely 700 blocks away from the center of the world, new chunks were generating. This was huge! Now, if it was like this in the Nether, it had to be for the overworld as well. I decided that I wouldn't test this in the creative world. I wanted to figure it out for myself in my hardcore world by finding the overworld legit. Of course, I didn't want to ruin the aspect of Skyblock for myself, or for you. So I set some ground rules. For the overworld, if I found it, I would only be allowed to take 2 things back that I previously couldn't get. Any saplings I found, and a single diamond. I'll mention the significance of a single diamond later. I also considered anything I could obtain regularly to be fair game unless they were difficult to get. This meant that I could get cobblestone, but not dirt. I could get emeralds, but not redstone. For the Nether, I only allowed 2 things to be obtained at all. Blaze rods and netherite. I couldn't get netherrack regularly, so I would leave it behind. But once again, anything I could easily obtain like quartz and blackstone was fair game as well, since they were fairly common with piglin trades. Now, if I made it to the end, I declared to myself that anything I found in the end was fair game, due to the fact that I had actually successfully accomplished my goal of getting there in the first place, and I felt I deserved a reward. In summary, it's possible to find actual land, and I would only allow certain items to be obtained from these new chunks, no matter how badly I wanted other things. One of my goals on the task wall was to get Protection 4 armor, so I decided that before I went out looking for the mainlands, I would use my librarians to get myself Protection 4 armor first. One of the villagers had a Feather Falling 4 trade, and another had a Protection 3 trade. Using both of these, I disenchanted my current armor and replaced it with Protection 4 on every piece, along with Feather Falling on my boots. I was now ready to begin the process of beating the game. With the knowledge that the Nether mainland was only 700 blocks away, I guessed that the overworld mainland was just as far. So, using obsidian I collected from piglin trades, I very carefully bridged out over the Nether void with slabs. 1 block in the Nether equates to 8 blocks in the overworld, so I would only have to travel around 90 blocks or so in the Nether in order to teleport 700 blocks out in the overworld. But for good measure, I went out to at least 120 to make sure that I wasn't at 1000 or something in the overworld. Sure enough, my 120 block portal brought me into the middle of a forest with no border in sight. So I returned, backtracked to 90 blocks, and made another portal. This one was dead on, and as I walked out, I saw it for the first time. Did we nail it? I wanted to leave my mark, so I built the letter M using my iron blocks to signify that I had been there. This looks insane, but I wasn't just there to look around. I needed something from here. Carefully and slowly, I searched the walls of the border for a cave to get stuck into. Once I found it, I searched for the precious diamond. Eventually, I found it using an F5 trick through lava. Oh. Diamonds below us! Diamonds below us! Oh my god. Once I returned to the surface, I collected a single spruce sapling, and I was on my way home. Once I had returned, I used my single diamond in the best way possible. The diamond, dude! I can make a shovel! But most importantly... Yes! Which one do I want to listen to? Which one do I want to listen to? Which one? Which one? Stall. Now it was the Nether's turn. This was much more challenging because instead of only bridging out 100 blocks and placing obsidian, I needed to bridge out the entire 700 block gap without dying. It took half an inventory of oak logs to do so, but I finally saw the world border. Once we made contact, I experimented a bit, and discovered that from where I was standing on the bridge, if I brought my render distance up to 48, which was the maximum, I could eventually see an entire corner of the cutout. It was an insane sight. Next up was blaze rods. In this new nether, it was possible to find a fortress. I had previously seen one around 600 blocks away whilst using 48 render distance, so I decided to try to get to it. But while getting there, I noticed a closer one slightly deeper into the nether. I slowly made my way to it, being extremely careful not to encounter any wrong-uns. Once I made it to the fortress, I searched for a blaze spawner. This fortress must have known I wanted to get out of it ASAP, so there was a blaze spawner almost immediately in my line of sight. I had returned home in between building the bridge and searching for the fortress to grab several fire resistance potions from the piglin trade area, which I had constructed a while back, and I used them to my advantage here. I had incredible rod luck, and in less than 10 minutes, I was in and out of the fortress, heading back to the overworld. I wanted to make a quick stop first. I went through the 120 block portal, and using the blaze rods, I crafted some Eyes of Ender and threw one. So what are our coordinates? 1,000, so we're probably about 500 blocks. I'm gonna guess it's that way. Okay, I was in the right, like, thing, alright? I then returned home to prepare for my next major goal. I knew I wanted to beat the game, but I wanted to become as prepared as possible. So once again, I returned to the Nether mainland and began digging for netherite scraps. Since I considered netherite to be fair game, I took time and effort to actually obtain it. I simply wanted the armor. I didn't really care about the tools, so I would only need 16 scraps to be satisfied. It took 4 diamond pickaxes to do, but I finally found enough and returned home once more. There, I crafted my netherite armor. Okay, guys. Yes! Let's go! Let's go! Bro, I'm looking hot and sexy now. Alright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those things.
All of them at the same time. It was time. Gathering my balls and my wits, I headed off back through the 120 block portal to find the overworld once again. I began searching for the stronghold, and while doing so, I discovered a mesa biome and a desert temple, both of which I promptly ignored. I had a goal, and I most likely wouldn't be allowed to have any of the items from the temple anyway, so I surged onward. After locating the stronghold, I found the portal room very quickly and wasted no time at all breaking the spawner and filling the portal. Oh, whew. I took a deep breath, prepared myself mentally, and jumped in. The dragon would be a worthy foe, but I had a plan. I was going to do this old-fashioned. Sword, bow, and arrow. After masterfully taking out each end crystal, I focused my attacks on the dragon itself. Is that all of them? No way, right? Okay. Alright. Okay, that's a good strat, I think. Okay, it's halfway dead. Alright, it's going down. Oh! Damn! There we go! Woohoo! Yes! I had done it. The dragon was dead. I celebrated by collecting the insane amounts of XP the dragon dropped. But because I was such a high level already, they barely made a dent. I then collected the dragon egg and allowed myself to relax a bit. Once I was done shaking, I decided I wanted an elytra, so that's what I did next. Bridging up to the entrance portal gateway, I was teleported out to the end islands. There, I maximized my render distance and scanned the surrounding area. In no time at all, I spotted the end city and made my way over, bridging over the void once more, but it hardly bothered me at this point. I began to conquer the end city as quickly as I could, trying to reach the ship which held my elytra. Thankfully, I had dozens of hours of practice with end cities, so this also hardly fazed me, especially knowing I had the strongest armor in the game on my body. I made it to the ship and realized with a shock that since the end was fair game, I was allowed to take this brewing stand. I snagged it and hurried my way down to the elytra room. Once I murdered the Guardian Shulker, I collected my prize. Yes! Oh, my silk touch shovel! I just realized while writing this script that I forgot to collect the dragon head. Damn it. Once I had my elytra, I decided that I wanted to grab a few shulker shells before I left. I felt comfort knowing that I wasn't that far at all from home. I could see my entrance portal from the city, and once I had enough shulker shells for my liking, I used my new elytra to fly it all the way back. Elytra on. Woohoo! Oh yes, dude. I can make it all the way over there. That's an easy flight. That's an easy flight! Yes, dude! Oh, I tried to get right in. The last thing I needed to do was beat the game. I took one last look around the end and jumped through the portal, letting all my anxiety and stress leave me with a single sayonara. Sayonara. Once home, I relished in the fact that I had beat the game. I didn't know what to do with the dragon egg, but after thinking about it for only a second, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Do you guys want to know the ultimate flex? I'm about to show it to you. Alright, so we have, we have our little desk here. I thought, maybe, just maybe, it might like a lantern. The ultimate flex, dude. Oh my god. This thing. Close the door. Who left that open? It couldn't have been me. For the rest of my days, I didn't know what to do. I simply spent time cleaning up the island and trying out one more farm, which was meant to be an automatic wheat farm using a farmer villager. However, I guess I didn't do it right, because he didn't want to cooperate with me, so I simply left it alone. That villager will forever spend his life up there in sadness. L. The cleanup also included moving all the beds that had just kind of been lying around into actual houses. I then turned every block of grass into path blocks in the industrial district to give it the industrialized feel. And then I decided to get rid of the last piece of my island that still remained from the original 100 days. The bridge out to the sand island. I'm below my island.
Yeah.
Remember I used to come down here all the time? Oh, the laughs I had.
What?
Now, only the campfire remained. This was the last thing that existed from the initial 100 days. I decided that I wanted to collect all the iron from the iron farm and put it all into one place. Over the course of the 100 days, I had been collecting that iron and turning it into blocks, and the farm had generated well over 10 stacks of them. I decided to create a structure that basically wrapped up this session. I was out of ideas, okay? On day 199, I took one last look at the world in shaders, patting myself on the back for getting this far. It was truly incredible. I actually felt I was done for good. There was nothing else I felt needed to be done. Sure, a beacon would be nice, but the amount of time off the Skyblock island that would take wasn't worth it to me. I didn't want to abuse the mainlands very much at all, so I decided against it. All in all, we accomplished all major goals and small tasks. We completely rebuilt our island, making it a thriving base of grand proportions. We completely rebuilt the gold farm. We got rich, and we beat the game. On the final day, I put on my wings and said goodbye to the space, and flew off into emptiness, leaving the base 100% complete and finished. Maybe one day I'll return, but who knows.